The best brands define their PR wow in a clear, concise, and compelling way to attract major media coverage, fans, and sales. Find out their marketing and public relations secrets today on 8 Second Branding with host Liz H. Kelly. Liz is the founder of Goody PR and the author of 8 Second PR. In each episode, she brings you the stories behind some of the best brands, CEOs, and authors. Plus, she explains how media appearances alone are 3 times more valuable than any paid ad. Now, here's your host, Liz Kelly.
Hello, this is Liz H. Kelly with an exciting new episode of 8 Second Branding with our guest, Yitzi Weiner. So hello, Yitzi.
Hello, Liz. It's a delight to do this with you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Well, Yitzi and I are going to talk about a really important topic, and that is how do you become a thought leader or an authority on a specific topic, because he actually is the editor of Authority magazine. And he has profiled, thousands of people?
Together with my team, we've done more than 25,000 interviews.
25,000 interviews. That's incredible. So you do this 24/7 and in your sleep?
Well, no, again, I have a very wonderful team behind me.
Well, I was reading your bio on LinkedIn, and I'll just read briefly that you are a journalist, author, and founder of Authority magazine. You're also the CEO of Authority magazine's Thought Leader Incubator, which I want to talk about, and that guides leaders to become prolific content creators. And then I also read in 2017, you created the popular 5 Things I Wish Someone Told Me. So tell us about that. Is that how you got started in this?
I guess a bit of a background. My background is I am a trained rabbi. I was a teaching rabbi for 15 years. I worked for almost 10 years in the Boston area. But as wonderful and fulfilling being a rabbi is, it was difficult to make ends meet to meet the needs of my growing family. So I decided that I was looking for an opportunity to start a business. Around that time, a friend of mine introduced me to become a writer at Huffington Post, and my beat at Huffington Post was to do interviews with thought leaders like I'm doing today, But I was under Huffington Post's aegis, and that was going great for a while. And I had spent a lot of time working on relationships with publicists. So eventually, Huffington Post they stopped that column. They stopped the whole direct contributor program. And my wife said, you have all these relationships with publicists. You can really start your own publication. And that was true. So basically, yeah. So pretty shortly afterwards, leveraging my relationships that I've already had from all my writing, I started Authority magazine. And the focus was to talk to people that are authorities in the field to share empowering and uplifting stories. So it's back to the question about how I started. So yes, I started. Basically, it was kind of serendipitous. It was kind of like the silver lining from a cloud. Something didn't work out, and then it created an opportunity. And then basically, yeah. So once we did that, I wasn't making that much money from it, but that led to creating the Thought Leader Incubator. And thank God we're very blessed that it's a thriving and growing organization.
That is just incredible. I love that. And when you wrote for the Huffington Post, I also wrote for the Huffington Post, and they cut us off like literally overnight. It was all the contributors. So that was a challenge, but that wasn't that long ago. That was 2018 that they cut everybody off. So you've done 25,000 interviews since 2018.
Yeah, again, that's not all me. We have more than 30 writers, and we publish approximately 300 to 400 articles a week. So that's how we do it.
Wow! Wow!
Yeah, most of it happened. Most of it happened around since then. Yeah, it all happened since then, actually. Yeah.
That's incredible. And I know that you're based in Baltimore, which is also where I grew up. But if you have 30 writers, I guess, are they all over the place?
Yeah, they're mostly on the coasts, but mostly East Coast and West Coast. But they're all I think all in the United States. I don't think anyone's out of the United States, but they're all across the country.
Wow. So how do you pick who gets a profile story? You do a lot of profiles, and a lot of the profiles are 5 tips, and they're different themes. For example, female founders or social impact leaders. So can you describe that a little bit more about, like, how do you come up with these themes and how do people get selected to have a profile story?
Sure. So number one, people email me all the time. People find my email and they email me. It usually comes from the publicist. That's really, for me, that's been my secret sauce, is that most journalists keep publicists at an arm's length because it's and there's a certain logic to it. It's like there's an adversarial relationship. It's like the defense attorney and a prosecutor. It's an adversarial process. If you're looking to find truth, so publicists may be biased in a certain direction. But my beat is sharing stories about people's lives. My beat isn't to break news, and it's not investigative journalism. My beat is to share stories, and I found that journalists and the publicists in that case are the best resource to be able to, best gatekeepers to reach people to share their stories. So that's kind of that really helps me a lot. So if people reach out to me primarily through their publicists, and I built a whole network. I have a Slack channel with about 5,000 publicists that speak to me all the time. I'm often in touch with any publicists that I've worked with. I keep in touch with them. So that's really the main way. I would say 90% of the people that come to me are through publicists that I've already worked with. So that's number one. And number two, people email me. If you find me an email and they reach out to me. And on the website, if you go to the About page, bottom it says here, you click here to submit to do an interview. So anyone can go to the website and fill out the form and submit to do an interview. And very often we'll accept them. Our goal isn't to feature only people that are famous. Our goal is to feature people that have stories to share, that have advice to share, and everyone can share advice. Everyone has experiences that they can share, and we have almost 200 different storylines. So we have a lot of surface area for people to be able to share their experiences or find the right fit. So that's the people are selected. And then there's another question about how we choose topics. I'm happy to answer that also if you want. Happy to answer that.
Well, that's just incredible, the way you set up your format and your team, and it's quite the engine. And so, yes, tell us a little bit about how you come up with the different topics, and I guess you get suggestions from people too, or how does that work?
Yes, I'll be honest. But so as we mentioned, my first thing that really worked was the topic 5 things I wish someone told me before I became a CEO. And then I just realized that just having a theme for my themes. I have the 5 things worked. I could give a certain trademark. The 5 things isn't overwhelming, but it's substantive, it's substantial. So that is our theme, overarching theme. And then I realized that I want to choose topics that are as universal as possible. That topics that will be both beneficial, really, for all the stakeholders. So stakeholders are really they're 4 stakeholders: the publication, me. So it should match our interests, our values, our message. The interviewee, the interviewer, the person who does the interview, and then the reader. So I try to find a topic that will match all those stakeholders' interests, and primarily it's topics that I think will be as universal as possible. So, like, if I have to choose a topic that's arcane, very specific, then we'll get only a few pitches. And again, as I mentioned, the way it works is we choose a topic, and I create a form. I put it out in my Slack group with 5,000 publicists, and then usually we get 200, 300 people that are interested in participating in the interview series. And what that means is, if we accept 300 people, that means just from that, just one email, that one thing, we get 300 articles. So I try to think of topics that will be as universal as possible, that won't get 10 pitches, but we'll get 300 pitches. And the truth is, I'm often surprised. I'm trying to think of a very good example off the bat, but there are topics like, that I didn't think necessarily were so interesting, like digital transformation. Yeah, like 500 pitches for that. So the times I'm surprised, but the bottom line is, it's things that, from my own experience, I think will be as universal as possible, and we'll be able to engage a large group of people talking about the topic. And I think what we're doing is we're most publications will do a lot of research, talk to a lot of experts, and then they'll have one article. But so our vision is that why just have one article? If you're talking to all those experts, let them all do an interview. So if you have 30 experts, let 30 people do an interview. So this way, it creates a lot of conversation about one certain topic. So in a certain sense, all of our topics are like a huge article with 500 people in them. And again, they're all individually indexed, but it creates. You see a lot, and it's very interesting seeing how different people talk about the same questions, but answer in different ways. So I find it very it's constantly interesting and informative to me.
So one of the things that I've noticed when you do these interviews is you do have a format, and that format, I think, is how you get so many interviews in. And can you talk a little bit about how that works?
Sure. One day I plan to write like an article or maybe even a book on how not to do a Q&A, because a Q&A format makes sense, and the reason it makes sense is because if you're going to do, let's say, a video interview, it would make sense to have me talk, because the format's going to be me talking. But if the output's going to be a written article, if I talk, and then you have to convert that by translating it into writing, then publish it, it loses a lot of texture, because the way we communicate verbally is very different than the way we communicate, in writing. So if the final output's going to be a written article, it makes sense to do a written interview. And very often when I do an audio interview and we convert it, we transcribe it, they're not happy with the results, because they don't sound as great as they wanted. People are much more happy usually when they do an email interview. So therefore, Q&A format makes sense for a written piece, but it can easily be like a lazy Q&A, where either the questions are very trite questions that people have seen a million times, or the questions that to me, again, at least to me, it sounds like they just didn't want to bother putting any thought into the questions. We try to make sure that the questions that are almost like we're having a conversation. It's almost like we're sitting together. So even though we're not talking directly, but it should have that feel, and it should have that effect. And also, I ask for stories. I think that if you don't ask for a story, it'll people give a one-word answer, and then it won't be an interesting read. It'll just be one-line question, one-line answer, and that's not interesting. I see questions as like a story container. It's an opportunity, a prompt to share a story, to share an insight. So that's why I ask for a lot of stories, and ask for personal stories, and we're not afraid to be unconventional. And I think that if you ask the same question that everyone else asks, it's not going to be interesting. But if you ask questions that you never have seen it being asked in an interview, like one question that's been popular and people often remark on how it's really made them think, is a question of, if you could start a movement that would bring the greatest amount of good to the greatest amount of people, and what would that movement be? And so it's a question that just popped into my head one day. I thought, yeah, that'd be interesting. And I tried it, and I saw it was a good response, and it worked. And people give these most amazing answers. But the question that you don't really hear people talk about all the time, but that's why it's interesting, because it's an interesting, and it's not frivolous. It's meaningful. So so that's part of what goes into questions. The bottom line is it shouldn't look like it's a lazy Q&A. It should be thoughtful, like a conversation in writing, and it should be a prompt for a meaningful story.
I love that. That's so important, because I interviewed somebody else, and they said people don't fall in love with logos, they fall in love with people, and it's really the stories and the emotions that connect people. And so I think that's awesome. What do you think is one of the best stories you ever heard about that? The biggest movement that they want to start? Do you remember a really good one?
Next time I go over there, I'm gonna try to look out for the best one. But one that sticks out that I refer to often is I once interviewed Floyd Mayweather, who was like a famous boxer, and it was like shortly after he like won this big championship. He was like he won and then he retired, and he wasn't somebody that on the surface you would strike to be. You have a certain stereotype about how he would behave and how he would act, but he answered in that question. He said he once started movements called something. Maybe I'm paraphrasing it, but it's something like guns for gloves. People who are given their guns, and instead he'll train them to box and to be fits. He wants to start a movement of this worldwide movement of trading in guns for gloves. And I thought that struck me because to me it was a whole new appreciation for what this man was, what he stood for, what he dreams to be.
I love that story. So, all right, I want to shift a little bit to what is the thought leader incubator that you started? Is that coaching people how to be a thought leader?
Yeah, so it's similar to that. Basically, it's in a nutshell, it's like a boot camp for to be a correspondent. It's like a boot camp. Basically, so the people that we interview, they're leaders, and they're reaching out to me because they want at some level to be able to have exposure to media. So, and that's that's one shot deal. There you're being the interviewee. So again, the article is about you. It's all about the interviewee. So the thought lead incubator is that we basically train people to be a media correspondent. We train them to be the interviewer. So they could start with doing a written interview series, or then they can graduate to doing like we're doing a video interview or audio interview. You could use those interviews to turn that into a book. So the idea is that it's to give them that training to do interviews, and then to leverage and repurpose that content for other media opportunities, and then they can become a contributor and eventually in Authority magazine, and then other publications that we have a syndication partnership with, and then we guide them to the process of how to apply to be a writer in other places as well. So yeah, that's what Authority magazine is. So for people that so regular PR is where you hire publicists to ask you to be featured in the media. This is a little different. This is where you're hiring us to ask you not to be not to be the one spoken up, but to be the actual, but to be the correspondent. So so it has the same results as PR, but it's from a different angle. So instead of this way, you're the authority. You're the one who's the expert on the topic.
Fantastic. And I think that really is so important. And I work with a lot of clients on their personal brand, but also their business brand, and talk about how they overlap. So can you talk a little bit about what does it take to become an authority? Like what Sure. do you need? What's the magic formula?
Sure. So I think everyone's experience will be different, and yes, so it's hard to say this is the way, but this is a way, not the way, but this is a way. This is a path, and everyone can find their own path. So number one, I think that authority comes from the word author, which means to write. I think that that writing a book, writing articles, gives you a cachet, a certain credibility, a certain gravitas that you don't get in any other way. So like you could be a famous influencer, social media influencer, Instagram influencer with 100 million followers, but you become, and you may become very, very famous, but you become an authority when that same Instagram person, if he or she writes a book on a certain topic, and that book is well received, or even if it's not well received, but the book is well researched, and there's expertise there and sharing thoughtful ideas. It shows mastery and control of a topic. So I think number one is to be an author. An author can mean to author articles, to share your own original articles, thought leadership art, sharing your ideas about it, expertise about a certain topic, and then eventually you can either turn those articles into a book or to write a book. And the truth is, everyone I think everyone can write a book, and everyone has the ability to write a book by starting with questions. You start with questions that you want to explore, a question that you think people want to know, and then you start with the question and then answer those questions. Then those answers are material for a book. Again, we can talk more about that, in the future. But I think everyone has a capability to write a book. So that's number one, is to write a book, is to be an author, either by publishing articles or by writing a book. I think also that it's to show expertise, either general expertise or expertise in a certain niche. So you don't have to be an authority about everything, but to have a certain expertise about certain fields. There's certain fields that could be very, very specific and not everyone knows about. But if you could master that, you don't have to know everything there is to know, but you know more than the regular person, and you publish about that. That makes you an authority. I think also that if you're able to prove your facts, make sure that it's either science-based or fact-based, or people can often see through things that are phony. But if you're able to back it up with evidence, that's very important. That makes you become authoritative. So those are some ideas. Some ideas. I think some rules of thumb, and becoming an authority.
I love that. So you need a book, you need facts, you need to be able to back them up and write stories and answer the questions that people ask you in your book and your stories and everything you really post. I think that's so important. When I wrote my first book, which was a dating book a long time ago, people said, well, you just got a PhD in dating, which, I didn't really want, but by writing a book, you do become an authority. So later on, we ended up at our 10-year anniversary of Goody PR, we ended up writing our book, 8-Second PR. And that's really why we wrote it, to become an authority, but also to give back by answering questions that we were getting from a lot of people. So this is kind of a do-it-yourself PR guide. If you can't hire a PR agency, or you just want to do it yourself as an authority. And our goal was not to sell 1 million books. It was more to become the recognized authority.
100%. At a very practical level, if you write a book, even if you only have one person buying your book, so you can upload your book to Google Books, and then it'll create a knowledge bar on the right side. So that gives you a certain credibility and cachet that regular people don't have. So just having any book will give you that knowledge bar in Google.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the other thing that is so fantastic right now is that they've made it so easy to become an author. So when I wrote that dating book, that was back in 2002, I did self-publish the first version. Then I got a literary agent and I got a New York publisher who paid a very small royalty. So, I mean, it was $10,000, which is great. That's a lot of money, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not. And then they take all the royalties. So now with 8-Second PR, we just self-published on Amazon. We said, we're not going to go through that again. But we did make it very professional. And so I would encourage our listeners, if you're going to publish a book, you do want to make it professional. And by professional, I mean, take the time to hire an editor, hire a book coach if you've never done a book before. And then you want to have a really good cover. I mean, this cover for 8-Second PR has really helped a lot. And we put a bid out on different profiles like Reedsy and what are some of the others? Fiverr, that you can get bids on. And we picked the one that was 3 times more than everybody else because we knew how important the cover was. And then we had a internal book designer. That was another person. It can be the same person as the book cover. But there are so many steps. And then we also hired a book project manager who had published books on Amazon before to take us through the whole process. And we worked with them for about 6 months. So I encourage people to write books, and maybe you have tips on this too, but do it the right way. So what would you say?
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. I've never written all the books that I've written were self-published. I never did it with the intention to sell 1 million copies. It was more to me, it was more like my general theory is that the main thing is to finish. You could always fix it later, but if you only wait till it's perfect, it'll never be perfect, and you never get it done. And we could always redo it later. We could always change it later. We could always find another publisher later. Just now it's done. It's out there, and if ever want to focus on promoting the book, we could do that. So yeah, so I defer to your experience in terms of all the other details. But yeah, for sure that there's so many. Another platform that I've used was Lulu, also another publishing platform that I found very useful for color books. Color books also was a nice platform.
So you bring up a really important point as an author. At a certain point, you have to really just let it go. And that is the hardest part, because otherwise, if you get stuck on being a perfectionist, you will never get the book published. And you do want to get it out, and then you can update it, and you can have different versions of the book.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
So absolutely. Okay, so let's see. So everybody is going to want to know, what is the secret to getting a column in Forbes or Entrepreneur or Inc.? Everybody I know wants a column there. So what would you tell them?
So I tell you from my own experience, it's always been because I had a connection to one of the editors. That's been my experience. So therefore, I've been lucky and I've been blessed, and that can't be replicated outside of my experience. But what I do advise to my clients, the basic idea is you want to create a triangulation, an alignment between three things. So you want to create an alignment between your past writing, your current experience, and what you plan to write about in the future. So for example, if you are an interior designer, so let's say, right? So and you approach let's say you want to write in Forbes, let's say. So you want to say, I'm an interior designer. This is my experience. This is my expertise. This is what I've written in the past about interior design and how it may relate to business, or how businesses can use interior design to increase productivity, whatever. And this is what I would like. This is what I propose to write. This is my what Forbes calls it, the swim lane. My swim lane that I would like to do. That I like to offer in Forbes. So this is what I would like to write about this topic. How design can impact work, whatever. So, but if you want to write about, you want to write about interior design, but your job is you're a school teacher, it may not. They may not accept you. Or if in the past all your writing has been about something else, and you want to write about something else, they want to see what you've written. So you want to create that triangulation between those three things: your past writing, your experience, and what you propose to write about in the future. So therefore, the idea is you want to find the managing editor of that particular topic. So the different topics in most publications. Then you want to put together like a portfolio of small, an email. This is what I've written about. This is what I do. This is what I would like to suggest, this topic. And then it's a matter of being persistent, trying different people. And it's a lot of luck. Persistence and luck. You could be the most talented person in the world, and they may ignore you, and you could be a person who's not so talented, and it'll strike their fancy. But it's a matter of keep trying. Different publications, different angles. Just keep trying.
I love that. Just keep trying and do the different angles. And I totally agree. And what I tell people is, if you pitch a story, until they say, no, we're not interested, then you just keep trying, and you keep trying different angles. So that's really good advice, just to keep trying, because if you don't hear anything, that's okay. The other tip that I give is be patient and persistent and never desperate, which actually came from my dating book. So be patient and persistent and never desperate, because if you are emailing somebody every day, that's going to get annoying. Then you're going to go in the spam, and you don't want to do that. So, okay. So let's see. All right. So we have about 10 minutes left. So I want to wrap up with a couple, more off the cuff or personal questions. If you had to say, who are the top leadership authorities right now, who would you say it is? Is it Tony Robbins? Is it Jack Canfield? Who do you read every day? Simon Sinek?
So who I read every day. I like biographies. I read biographies of different leaders. So I think there's a difference between somebody who writes about leadership and a person who has lived leadership and has displayed leadership. Like Barack Obama was a wonderful leader. He was a wonderful leader. So, and I think as his leadership advice would be very different than somebody who writes about leadership, who didn't have that same experience. So I personally, I like reading stories about actual leaders who actually lead. But all the names that you mentioned are all great. They're all experts. We feature many of them in Authority magazine. They're all great authorities, and they all share great advice. And I recommend all of them, all those people. But I really like to read biographies of leaders.
I love that. Okay, great. All right. So if you had to say there was one thing that you wish you knew before you started writing, what would it be? It's
funny. It's easier to say 5 things than to say one thing. One thing.
Well, you can give me 3.
I think for me, my big thing is the power of humility. This relates to vulnerability, but I think that so much of us, we assume being authority is being an expert is about knowing everything and coming out with extreme confidence. But I think that you could be an expert, you could be an authority, and you could be humble as well, and you could be vulnerable as well, and you could just say you don't know certain things as well, and that makes it much more powerful, because then it demonstrates that you're not a blowhard who's trying to overcome an insecurity. You're actually, this is what I know, this is what I don't know. So I think humility in the sense of I'm not better than anyone else. I don't know all that there is to know. I admit that I have made mistakes. I'm not sure about certain things and may be wrong. Injecting humility can make you a much more authentic leader, authority, and writer.
I love it. That's great. Last question. What do you think are some good things you can do in 8 seconds?
That's a great question. I love the power of self-talk and affirmations. I once heard a great audiobook by Brian Tracy, and he said, whenever you're nervous, to say to yourself, I like myself, like it was with enthusiasm. I am great. And just like give yourself a good self-talk, a good pep talk, can be very, very powerful in 8 seconds. Just saying, I am great, I am loved. That could be very impactful.
that just made my day. I love that. Yay. So where can people find you?
If they Google my name, it'll come up. Google Yitzi Weiner, you'll find me. Yitzi Weiner on Facebook and Twitter. The truth is, I don't publish too much of my personal stuff on social media. It's mostly my writing and interviews. But you can find me. You can contact me. Just type in my name.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And it's so nice to see you in real life on video. And thank you for everything you do with Authority magazine. Really, 25,000 interviews. Unbelievable. So let's give Yitzi a standing ovation.
You're really so nice. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Do you want to increase your sales and word of mouth marketing by constantly being in headline news? Instead of getting lost at a big agency, Goody PR specializes in VIP service, where making your business look good is their top priority. Goody PR founder and best-selling author Liz H. Kelly has been there, done that, and built a team of PR professionals who have booked thousands of major media interviews for clients, including The Today Show, CNN, Fox News, BBC, NPR, and many, many more. Let them partner with you to find ways to magnify your brand so it emotionally connects and reaches your ideal audience. And the best part is that media interviews are 3 times more valuable than any paid ad. What are you waiting for? Email info@goodypr.com today. Set up a call to discuss how to get your story and business moving forward. That's info@goodypr.com. Thank you for tuning in for this edition of 8 Second Branding. Keep checking back for new shows featuring your host, Liz H. Kelly, on the Voice America Business Channel.